Hi, I'm Leslie Fiorenzo, and I'm a business presentation coach. I help my clients captivate their audience through public speaking, and I'm so excited to share a soulful self-care conversation with all of you today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Fiorenzo with Women's Successful Living, and I am so excited to bring our new revamped and new named show to you. We've gone from Conversations with Pearl to our Soulful Selfcare Conversations, because truly that's what we talk about here on our podcast and our YouTube channel is the ways that we can incorporate self-care into our lives. How do we set boundaries? How do we advance in our career? How do we, as entrepreneurs, find a way to have balance between all of that? And then if you're a mom and you're listening or a parent, how do you make time for self without feeling guilty because you might not be with your kids all the time or your spouse? So I'm excited today because we're going to kind of delve into speaking, sharing your story, setting boundaries around that, especially in your career. And what better way to do it with our special guest today? And that is Miss Leslie. She is coming to us. She is after failing to win the top prize in a speech contest early in her career, Leslie began her journey towards excellence in public speaking. Her unique approach comes from over 30 years spent in corporate HR environments using the skills that she now teaches. Leslie has earned a number of certifications and a master's degree in human resource development. She is the author of 21 Lessons to Master Difficult Conversations. And boy, do we talk about that a lot here. And she's also the bestseller, Find Your Voice, Conquer Your Fear, and Share Your Story with Confidence. And you can get both of these on Amazon. We'll put them in the show notes as well. But I'm so excited to have with us today our special guest, Leslie Fiorenzo. Welcome, Leslie.
Thanks, Pearl. It's a thrill to be here.
Yay! It's funny we talk about the speaking part. I'm going to dive into that with you in a minute, but I'll share my story when it comes to sharing my speaking and the fear I had of speaking. And my husband, if he was listening right now, I was like, really? You got over that long time ago. But I did have a fear. But before we get started, there's something fun that I always like to do with my guests. And it's really about thinking back and talking to that inner child, because, with self-care, oftentimes things that show up in our life happen because of something that might have happened to us when we were younger, something someone said, someone did, that little girl inside of us is still trying to heal from, right? She's had some things that have happened to her. And so, but I want to talk to the little girl who was like growing up before things might have gotten in her way, before the adulthood came along and said, oh, you can't do that. Why would you think that? Why would you say that? That little girl who growing up playing with Barbies or playing outside in the park, whatever you're doing, she had dreams. She wanted to do something big in her life. She wanted to grow up and maybe be the president of the United States someday. Maybe she wanted to be a doctor, a nurse, or just be an amazing, what I call CEO mom, running a home and having that white picket fence, right? So I always like to find out from my guests to kind of, talk to that little girl for a moment. I would love to know what little Leslie wanted to be when she was growing up, and how does it correlate to what you're doing today? Because I think it's always interesting. Most of the time when I ask the question, it correlates a lot to what we're doing today. Like, for instance, for me growing up, and if you've listened to us before, you've heard this story 1,000 times from me, but I grew up thinking I was going to be a teacher. I want to go teach elementary school. I wanted to teach kids. In high school, we had a program where we did this like working program. So I would get out of high school my senior year early, head over to, I used to ride a little moped, drive my moped over to the elementary school. And I was like a teacher's assistant for the afternoon. I think it was like right after lunch. And I had so much fun doing that. The challenge was that I didn't have great educators to lead me to how to move to the next step with college. My parents are clueless with that. So I went to the School of Hard Knocks. And so I never had the opportunity to become a teacher. But I jokingly say to my clients now, because I coach middle-aged women on overcoming the saboteurs of putting ourselves first. But I love to talk with them about the fact that I probably would have taught you in elementary school, but I was meant to teach you now. Right. So here I am still teaching and doing that now. So Leslie, share with us, little Leslie when she was younger, what did she want to do when she grew up? And then tell the audience and show the audience, how does it correlate to what you're doing today?
But Pearl, one of my earliest memories, and I think I was probably about 3, is we lived next door to a church. I'm not sure what denomination, but after Sunday school one day, I remember standing outside, and I was younger. I have 2 older siblings, so there was no one, little ones. There wasn't anybody in the neighborhood. Anyway, standing at the door, shaking hands with the kids as they were leaving Bible study or Sunday school or whatever it was. So for me, it's always been about people and connecting with people and being just helping them be their, getting to know them, helping them be their best.
And look what you're doing that today. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Is it? But
Yeah.
see, so you just showed my theory that it happens. Like if you're listening to us, there's things that you can manifest in your life. There's things that you can say, I want to do in my life. And you
Mhm.
can make them happen if you just work on it and do those things. In fact, like we're talking about speaking and using your voice and not being afraid.
Yeah.
When I met my husband, Leslie, I grew up in a house when my parents would have a disagreement, an argument, they just wouldn't talk to one another. That's basically how it was. Like you walked like eggshells. And then all of a sudden everybody was fine. You're like, when did they work that out? Like you had nothing of communication growing up.
Mm.
So when I met my husband, if I was upset with him, I would just shut down and he would be like, well, I can't work on this if you don't tell me. And to the point that he would actually start having the conversation for me. And I was like, oh, no, I wouldn't have said that. So with him, I started coming on the show. But then as I advanced in my career, I was a leadership and I had a mentor say, you need to go learn how to speak in front of people, in front of teams and leaders and things like that. So she sent me to Dale Carnegie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the best thing in the world for me. And if Dan Parsons is listening to me, he was an amazing, amazing instructor. I actually became a coach with him for quite a few years. And then here I am, I'm still speaking on stages today. If you had asked my little girl, if she had told you, she would have said there's no way she was going to get on a stage. There's no way she's going to hold this podcast. There's like this, what we're doing here would have never been in my little girl. But I know that when we step into having our voice and being confident with our voice, you don't have to speak on stages, but you certainly, especially in your career, you certainly can use that voice to help you have a better job experience, have a better career experience. And so talk with us, Leslie, share with the audience, what are some of the things that you see? Maybe let's start where's the biggest struggle that someone has when it comes to sharing their voice and stepping and speaking, and then we'll dive more into some other questions.
So I think for a lot of people, especially women, it's that inner critic. And we listen to that voice that tells us any number of things about how we're not good enough, not worthy enough, can't do this, can't do that. And it's so interesting that a woman, unless she meets all the criteria or 90% of the criteria for a job, will not apply, will not consider herself qualified. Whereas a guy, he meets 3 out of 10 things, he's applying. Right. So I think as women, we need to learn to promote our own horn. We've been told that it's not nice, that we don't. And if you don't promote yourself, if you are not able to talk about your skill set and the things that you bring to the table, not in a braggadocious way, but just being honest about these are the things I've accomplished. These are what I can do. Here's how I can help. Being really clear about that, it's so powerful. And you look at women, I don't know, I didn't see the Golden Globes, but I read this after the fact that Demi Moore admitted that she let some comment, and that's what we do. We let some comment by some teacher or some well-meaning somebody adult in our life impact us. A friend of mine said the other day it was something that happened to her in college, and some random guy made a comment and that stuck with her. And so we've got to get over that and not listen to that critical voice. We need to summon what I call an inner champion, somebody that's supportive and on our side. And the good news, Pearl, about our brains is we can rewire those neural pathways. Might take a little work, not going to happen overnight, but we are able to do it.
I love that you said, and I love you brought Demi Moore because I saved that clip for when I do retreats every year. And I think it's such a powerful message that she shared because you're right. First of all, we start with the inner voice. Let's go right there. We tell ourselves all these things. We allow the judge and the saboteur. And I love coaching my clients on that. I'm like, I had a client the other day. I called her and I said, why are you letting the judge and the saboteur show up? You are allowing them. The light switch you can use. The mechanisms to use to change that. And have that, like you call you have the champion voice within. Get into that champion and bring her out. Like, let her shine because you're allowing that inner voice and that saboteur to say, "Oh, I shouldn't go and do that. I'm not worthy of asking for that raise, or I'm not worried of asking for that promotion." We had a friend that was here just before September 1st. She came for my retreat. She's one of my ambassadors, and her and my husband had these great conversations. And he's telling, he's retired from the government. He was, he had a high level position. He trained and coached and mentored and was supervisor of many amazing people. And he's like, listen, I love when my people came and said, I want to move to here. And he goes, and I would help them. He's like, don't let anybody shine, dim your light. Like, go for it. All that can happen was say no. And I looked at him, I go, you would make a really good coach, But he's like, no, I don't want to do any of that. But you're right. Like, that inner voice stops us. And you're right. Demi Moore, oh my gosh. She said, somebody told her she was just a popcorn actress and she was not going to go anywhere. And she allowed that. I was so shocked that she had not won an award before. I literally looked at my husband and go, she's not won that award. I was so surprised. I was so glad she was there. And I was so glad she sent that message out because we, especially like you said, women, we are our biggest critic, especially to other women too. It's oftentimes that other women will knock down somebody else. It's like, what are you doing? It's so mind blowing. But like you said, having that inner champion. And even if it's like if you need to have somebody like a friend or somebody who's that champion, it should be, like you said, it should be yourself because you can rewire your brain. Your brain, like we talk, is your best friend, but your worst enemy. But you need to wire that best friend to show up when when the enemy is trying to tell you, no, don't go do that. No, why are you going to go ask for a raise? Or why are you going to go talk about your story? Because what we have to do, our talents are amazing, and other people need to see those talents. Other people want to learn from your talents. And what better way to leave a legacy on mark on this world by doing that?
Mm-hmm. So the question that I continue or encourage people to ask themselves is, if not you, who? And no one can share your story in the way that you can share it.
Yeah, if I like that. If not you, who? It's so true, and you're right because especially like self-care. Let's like talk about boundaries and everything like that. Like if you take like career-wise, if we allow somebody, leadership or somebody we report to, or even somebody who reports to us to tell us, you don't know what you're talking about. You've not done that. Like if you have the talent, everything, and you believe that you can do it, step into that voice you have and be like, listen, I know I can do this. I know I've got the talent. I know I have the experience, and step in and be like, I want to show you. Give me the opportunity to shine. Because it's just like also like setting boundaries, at the same time while we're asking for that, we also, if you are, working these amazing careers that you're doing, you also have to understand boundaries. And so we have to put the boundary around being like, I'm not going to let somebody tell me that I'm not good enough, that I'm not smart enough, that I don't know that I can leave this mark on this world. And so when you work with your clients, Leslie, like, how do you help them? Because people are listening to us are going, yeah, but they've got all the buts, right? Yeah, but it's so hard to ask for that. It's so hard because people just don't care, or people, my boss just doesn't care. Like, how do you talk to that? How do you help your clients like work through that to understand that voice that they have, let it shine?
Yeah. So the question is, if you're in a situation where there's some toxicity, where somebody's belittling you or not letting your light shine or not encouraging you, then I would really encourage people to think about, this is not a great place for me. I know I spent 18 months at a job that was, I should have left on the second day. And it didn't do me or my family any favors. So, and I understand it's hard, but find an advocate. And if you don't have one at your workplace, then look someplace else, find a mentor, somebody who can help you make a plan to get the heck out of there, if that's where you need to be, if that's what you need to do. Now, if you're in a good situation where people around you are supportive, then being willing to share. And Brene Brown talks all the time about vulnerability and how impactful it can be. So, learning to be vulnerable, it can be really hard because we're afraid. Well, what if I get laughed at? Or what if people make fun? Or what if it doesn't go my way? Or what if, what if? But what if it does? Can you visualize the thing happening in your favor? And the other reframe I encourage people to think about is it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. So, where's the lesson? Where's the learning? And how can I use this as a stepping stone? Because it's all about stepping stones. It's small changes. Big things don't happen. I mean, we talked about Demi Moore, that she's been how long of a actress? Her career has been, she's had so many great roles, but now this is the first award. Yeah.
I love what you're saying, like, it's happening for me. Because oftentimes, like, that fear stops us from stepping into what it is we want to do, because we're afraid what if it doesn't work out? We're afraid of what if they don't like me? We're afraid of what if I don't do it as well as I think I can? And it's like you said, well, what if you do? What if, why are you gonna let the fear, the false evidence appear real stop you? And I love, like, when I work with my clients, I love to tell them, so let's just step into it. Let's step into this stuff, because guess what? It's either going to come out a beautiful way, or you're going to have a lesson you're going to learn. So the next time it comes up, you're like, oh, I remember how that felt. So no, we're going to do it this way, and so it's like, why are you going to let it hold you back? And, one of the things I love to also talk about and coach on is, like, we have these goals and these visions and these plans. I mean, we're talking about Demi Moore a lot here too, right? What if she had said, maybe that person's right. Maybe I am a popcorn actress, and she stopped after Ghost. Like, what if she stopped after Ghost? Oh my gosh, there's so many other roles that are so powerful that she's done, right? And so it's like the path is done. Like, that path is there for you. And when you stop the path and think, oh, let me go take a left turn or a right turn off the path, you end up back on the path anyways, because that's where you were supposed to be. You were supposed to be on that road, and it's going to be a little hard. There's going to be potholes in there. There's going to be people who are going to be like, let me just put some sticks out there to give you a flat tire real quick. There's going to be those things that are going to come up. But it's like, what if I step in the hole? So what? My foot comes back out of the hole. And I maybe have to wear a splint on my ankle for a little bit. That's okay. I'll learn something from it, And what if I come out and it's like, wow, I filled up that hole before it even got to me, and look at the beautiful thing that happened to me. It's I love you said, like, the what if, and if not me, then who? Somebody, it's like it reminded me when I talk to my clients about self-care. They'll go, I don't have time, or I need to, I just can't do it. I've got to do this project. I have that project. My kid needs to go here. We put all these things in our way. And I always say to my clients, especially my clients that work at high level positions, I'm like, do you understand that tomorrow, if you're not here, they're going to slide somebody into that seat where you're working. So if you don't use your voice to start saying to your job, to your boss, or even to yourself as an entrepreneur, I need to go home, or I need to go do this because it's important to me, you're allowing them to control your legacy. And then what are you leaving behind for anybody else? Like, why are you giving that control to somebody else instead of communicating? Oftentimes, one of the things we do, and when I work with my clients, we take this test to see where's their mindset, where their judges and saboteurs are. And so one of the times, sometimes the higher level person is a controller. They think they have to do everything. And I'm like, so what if you looked at it differently? What if you said, I've got this great team. Maybe Mary Jo can do this part of this. She may not do it as well as you do it, or the exact same way you do it, but what if she did it better than you, and it gave you less stress? And how does that look good for how well does that make you look? And then how much empowerment are you giving her to be like, wow, I did this and she had, confidence. And so it's so powerful to watch how the mind shift when it works with my clients to say, what if it worked out? And you just said, I have to release so that I can be on time for my kids' soccer game, show up Friday night for my kids' football game, spend some date nights with my husband, or sit on the couch and watch a silly cartoon with your kids. Like how much, tomorrow, if you're not here tomorrow, what are they going to say? Your job's going to be like, slide somebody in the seat, but your family's going to remember that you left work to come spend time with them, that you did these special things with them. And so I like that, like that you brought that up. If not me, then who, right? If not, somebody, right? So Leslie, as you work with your clients and they start to grasp this idea, like I know for me as a coach, I get so proud of my clients when they really be like, boundaries are important. I can say no with confidence and I can say it with a smile on my face. So what is it like when you start having, like, maybe you can give us an example of one of your clients who had this struggle in their life and then they really grasp what you're coaching them on and how to change their life.
Well, so one of my clients, their anxiety got the better of them anytime they stood up in front of a group and literally would shake, physically shake. And so we worked on, because there's always a story behind that typically. There's some false story that their inner critic is beating them up with. And so we worked on uncovering that story, but then we can't just uncover it. We need to replace it with a new one. We need to create those new narrow pathways. And they were able to stand up in front of a group and talk about their business for 10 minutes. No shaking, no anxiety. It was so fantastic. I was so proud of them. They did such a great job on sharing the story of their business.
I love that. I love that story. You paint this picture so well. I remember those days of trembling. I remember when I first went to Dale Carnegie and did that, right? I remember going, and then with Dale Carnegie, they teach you how to talk. Like you got to give a 2.5, 3 minute talk, right? So it's like, I have to get all that in. And I'm a talker, as you can see. That's why I do this podcast, because I love to talk and share, right? But I was like, oh my gosh. And then, as we were, I graduated course and really, that's why I can't also Dale Carnegie. I love Dale Carnegie. They're also the reason why I can't watch award shows anymore. Because in Dale Carnegie, like when you win an award, it's like, thank you very much, and thank you again. It's like boom, 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 get off. And then when you're watching the award shows, they're going blah, 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 and I'm like, I just can't watch it. So, but I remember like when I was coaching, we would always get certain class members would be assigned to us, and we check in with them during the week and review what they're going to talk on, or review their speech they're going to say, and the 3 minute talk. And I remember that sometimes they get up there and they get nervous, or the hands, like the holding the hands, rubbing your hands, and we would give them Coke cans. They'll hold them in their hands and be like, okay, stop. And it was interesting because like all of a sudden their nerves would go away, but then they're like going, I had this Coke. It was, the mind is a crazy thing to tell us, all these things. I just love that, you're right. The anxiety becomes, one of the things that I remember hearing the story about Johnny Carson. I'm really aging myself because I'm talking about Johnny Carson from The Tonight Show. For those of you who don't know, and if you're much younger than I am, go look him up. He's one of the originals on The Tonight Show, but he was always nervous for every show. So he would do jumping jacks behind the curtain before he came out, right? And so when you're working with your clients and they have like that anxiety, what are some of the things that you do to help them like kind of sort of like calm the nerves? We've heard things like, oh, picture everybody naked or whatever, like that's so crazy. I'm like, I can't picture somebody naked. That's not a picture I want in front of my face, right? I remember one time I did, before I got introduced to Dale Carnegie, I did mortgages. And I was going to this conference, and I was a loan processor, and I knew private mortgage insurance, it was going to be discussed. And I knew the area pretty well from the training we'd gotten from the person who was our rep. Well, our rep was going to present, and she got sick. So they had asked me, hey, can you present? Because, you work with Beth so well and you know her stuff. I'm like going, oh my God, I got to talk in front of people. And like, that was my first time. And I remember it's in my head, I remember the thought, okay, they tell you to picture everybody naked. I'm like, no, what's my favorite stuffed animal? I loved teddy bears growing up. So I just pictured them as a bunch of teddy bears.
There you go.
But what are some of the techniques you help your clients with when they have that big anxiety coming up?
Well, not picturing people naked, but picturing your audience being supportive. Your audience is there because they want to hear from you. Just like your audience is listening to your podcast because they want to hear from you and the folks that you interview and they like your ideas. So they're supportive of you, number one. Number two, it can be helpful to have something tactile to keep you grounded. So if you have a small something to keep in your hand, in my the desk behind me that's partially covered, but I have a worry stone. I didn't think to grab it, but that can be, or maybe you have some small artifact that was your family's, maybe it's your grandmother's brooch or something, but something that you can hold in the palm of your hand that you can feel, but it's not obtrusive and it's not going to be a pen where you're going to click the top and it's not going to be a rubber band where you're going to wind it around your. I've seen people do both of those things and that is distracting, but something that can connect you. I also tell people keep both feet flat on the floor, no matter if you're seated or standing, so you can feel grounded and move, but move with purpose. So if you're in front of a group, it's a little different on camera, but if you're in front of a group in person, leaning in or stepping forward as you make a point and then drawing back, those are some things to think about. Breathing techniques, I love. And the thing about a breathing technique is, first of all, you have to practice it before you need it. And you're probably not going to do the one where you plug a nostril and breathe. That's not good when you're in front of a group. That could be a calming technique you use before you step out on stage, because that's been proven to help lower your blood pressure and your anxiety. But simply thinking about focusing on your breath and see it going well. Visualize yourself being amazing. Visualize that audience cheering at the end. It's a standing ovation. You knocked it out of the park. Because, Pearl, all too often, we visualize the opposite and we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, what if I make a mistake? What if I screw up? No, what if I'm amazing? What if I connect with my exact right client? What if people line up to come and see me? Wouldn't that's going to be so amazing. So hold those visuals for yourself.
I love what you said. Remember everybody there is supportive. They're there because they want to hear you talk, right? That's so important to remember that. It's like, that's a boundary you should give yourself around anxiety about speaking, because the boundary needs to be, why am I worried? They're there to hear me talk. I'm the expert, they're coming in to hear me, the expert. And it's so powerful when we remember those things. So Leslie, we talked in your, I shared a little bit about your bio. And then you shared about, your 30 years in corporate and you're speaking. Tell us one of your stories about the first time you were speaking and why it led you down this path to start doing what you're doing today.
So the speaking contest that I failed, one of the pieces of feedback I got from someone was, you had a death grip on the podium. Did you think it was going to run away? And I didn't even realize that. So some things we just do because we do them and we're not thinking. And again, that our brain's job is it's keeping us safe, and it does crazy stuff to us.
That's wild. That you had a death grip on that. That's I can just imagine. One of the things that I don't like, we have to learn to adapt as speakers, especially, is holding a microphone. I'm like, hate holding the microphone because it makes my hand stay right there, and you can't I just feel like you're watching my microphone, it just feels like so uncomfortable. But I'm like, I gotta do it, so I just try to make it fun, and every once in a while, I'll try to switch the hand with it or something. And every so often, I even joke about the microphone. Oh, this thing, I'll kind of so I can kind of move it around because it's such a distraction for me, but like you said, one of the things that I also do, so I coach on positive intelligence. It's called PQ. There's an amazing
Yes.
app on it. And so one of the things they talk about is things you can do to sort of calm yourself down, calm your mind, some things like rubbing your fingers together, rolling your toes. So I always tell everybody, and if you're listening, I'm going to say this now. When you see me speak, if I have open toe shoes on, you're not allowed to peek at my feet. But one of the things that I do is not necessarily have a rock in my hand. I will roll my toes sometimes. And I will just that's just my way of calming me down. If I feel like, oh my gosh, I missed this mark on this or whatever, I just kind of roll my toes and be like, okay, I'm fine. Or I also have, I name my judge and saboteur. I mean, I had an amazing Aunt Betsy, and maybe this is why I named my saboteur. I named it Betsy because I also love horses and she loves horses. So it kind of brings that picture of her horseback riding in my brain. So sometimes I'll just be like, okay, Betsy, I need you to shut up right now or whatever, calm me down right now. So I do things like that just to kind of help, calm myself down and, work through that. But so when you on this journey, so you went up there and they asked you if you're having a death grip on the podium. What, what, what said, we all come across our passion differently. So how did you take from that situation into your passion and changing it to what you do today?
I knew it was something I wanted to improve. And I can remember a really good friend of mine, my best friend growing up, her mom led a Bible study fellowship group, and it was in a fairly large, and I don't remember the particulars. I think there were small groups, but then we'd all come into the auditorium, and she was standing at that mic delivering a message. And I just thought, that would be so amazing to be up there delivering a message like that. Not that I've delivered Bible study messages, but you get the idea. I wanted to be in front of the group, in front of the crowd. And I want to just, while I'm thinking of it, Pearl, if you don't mind the comment about the microphone, I would encourage people to use the mic, whether it's something they have to hold or asking for a lavalier or the one that goes around your ear nowadays. Mic, save your voice. I've heard too many people say, "Oh, I don't, I can project." Use the microphone and let people hear you.
I 100% agree with you on that. Even as much as I don't like holding it, it's like I know it's important because somebody in the back, their hearing may not be as good as the person in the front, and I want my voice to be heard throughout. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah, I think it's so important to remember that use a microphone. Don't. Oh, my voice is. I hate when they do that because there's somebody always is like, I didn't hear what they said, or can you tell me what you said back there? So yeah, I love that. So I want to kind of we're talking about boundaries and talk about overcoming fears and things like that. And a lot of this does correlate around self-care because when we overcome our anxiety, we, even the breathing lessons, like you said, breathing practices, doing things like rolling my toes, things like all of that helps anxiety overall in our lives. But one of the questions I always ask when my guests come on, there's a form that they complete. So for the listeners and those watching, there's a form they complete so that I have information and we can make sure all the guest information gets out to you, the reader and the listener, so you can have access to them. But one of my questions I always ask is what is your hero journey around self-care? Where, how have you been able to put your self-care first and what does it mean to you? And so I know that you share that, you learn that self-care is not selfish and that it has to start your day and your morning ritual. Will you share with the audience, what is some of your rituals around self-care?
So I have a pretty, and it varies a little bit, but the first hour to an hour and a half of my day is just for me. Now, my husband's retired. He's a late sleeper. I don't have little kids at home. So those of you that don't have the luxury, I'll say, but I think you can find 5 minutes for yourself, even if you have to lock the bathroom door. And I remember thinking when my daughter was born, and I won't tell you how old she's going to be next month, but anyway, I remember thinking, how am I going to accomplish all this? And I laid her on a blanket in the bathroom when I showered in the morning because my husband had already gone to work at that time. But anyway, we made it through. But I've learned because I didn't always have that. And very early in my career, I slept till the very last minute, hit the snooze, and I rode to work with a woman. She picked me up, and I was invariably 99% of the time late. And she said to me one morning, she said, if you can't be on time, I'm not picking you up anymore. So she set a clear boundary with me, but it was a wake up call that my behavior was impacting her. And she said, we're not going to be late for work. I can't, you got to get it together. So anyway, through a series of events and through some learning and coaching, I learned the value of a morning routine. So it involves some kind of exercise, usually yoga or stretching. When it's summer, it's a walk because when it's light outside, and I live in Michigan, most of the year it's not nice, but we have about 3 or 4 months that are. And then some meditation and prayer, journaling. I use an app that I have where I look at or have some daily meditations, that kind of thing. So,
I love that. You're right. It's so important to have a ritual. It's so important to create some sort of habit in our life that allows us to have that self care. I was laughing when you were talking about your daughter when she's a baby because I'm like, yeah, I remember when we first adopted Matthew, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was a mortgage broker. I was like, how am I going to get to work on time? And like you said, laying him in the, it's like and you shower so fast. It's like, okay, I know I can do this fast. It's like. And as I get older, we're like, okay, I want to enjoy it. Yes, I want to enjoy the shower and everything. But, for me, it took me the longest time. I mean, I was such a people pleaser, Leslie, that I was like, until my kids were in high school before I realized I got to do something for me first, and you were talking about having the worry rock, like when you're speaking, a rock is what changed my life because I realized after taking a course, and I've talked about this often on my show here that it was called Identity and Destiny course. And after 6 weeks, we had to give our I am statement. And I was still saying I was all my titles, mom, wife, volunteer, all these things, my employment, everything. And I realized I got to change something. And so I was walking one day and saw this rock on the ground and I just picked up the rock. I'm like, it was pretty. I'm like, I didn't know why I had it. I was on my way to an event and somebody had asked me if I would do something for them. And my hand rubbed against this rock that was in my pocket. I was like, oh no. And I like said no so fast. It was like, they could tell like it was uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just saying it's not a good thing for me to help you with that right now. And so I walked out of that meeting and that event and be like, I've got to learn to say no. So I actually use the rock. I don't have to carry it with me anymore. Every once in a while, if I get overwhelmed, I'll put it in my pocket.
yeah.
But I made a commitment that 3 times a day I had to move that rock to say no to something so that I was saying yes more often to myself. And it's made a huge difference in my life. It's allowed me to set boundaries. It's allowed me to, overcome that people pleasing. And it's so important, like you said, is to have something that, allows us to 5 minutes a day. I remember coming home and like I said, my kids were in high school and I remember coming home and tell my husband and our boys, like, okay, listen, I'm going to go in the room. I'm going to take some time for myself. I don't know when I'll be out, but unless the house is on fire, don't come bother me or anything. If you have to go to the hospital, your dad can take you. And they just all looked at me like, what? What's that about? It's like, I got to do something for myself. And so that's what I started doing. And every once in a while that people pleaser creeps up because I want to help, and we have to remind ourselves that we don't have to be the helper all the time. So I totally I love that you shared that story and, it brought me back to my boys are, my oldest is, unfortunately lost him 2 years ago in a tragic car accident at 25. And my youngest is turning 25 this weekend. So it's a really interesting year this year for us with their age groups. But I remember when we brought Matt home, we adopted him at a month old and bringing him home. I'm like, oh, now how am I going to make this work? So you gave me a beautiful memory. I appreciate that for sure. So I want to make sure everybody knows how to reach out to if they want help with, moving themselves in their career and their speaking. Share with the audience how they can reach out to you. We'll also put in the show notes. And if there's anything you want to offer them, please take time to do that.
Sure. So they can find me at lesliefiorenzo.com on my website, and they can book a complimentary call with me. They can also download my free resource, which is your 5 tips for speaking excellence. So it says free resource, I think, on there. I can't remember without looking at the title of my website or the tabs, but it's easy to find. And just let me know how I can help.
I'm so excited you were on with us today. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to shuffle our cards because we have the opportunity, like we do every week, every time we do an episode. And Leslie's going to tell me when to stop shuffling so that she can answer the question on the card. So here we go, Miss Leslie. Oh, hold on one second. Let me come back to you. All right. So tell me when to stop shuffling.
Stop.
All right. Your card says, what is your point of impact? So what is your point of impact in this world?
I'm going to say I'm not really sure. Can you explain the question a little bit?
So my point of impact is to remind others, like I want to, empower others to know that they have to say yes to themselves because otherwise we can't show up for others when we want to. So that for me, that would be my point of impact. What would yours be?
So it would be to help them find their voice and share their story with confidence because you have a story to share and your story is important.
I love that. Thank you so much. I love that message. So thank you. That's a great point of impact. So I want to thank you, Leslie, for joining us today. I want to thank you for empowering others to use their voice and get it out there and start sharing their voice. So we can all hear their voices. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe below. If you're listening to us on all the different platforms, make sure you share us out, have a cup of tea with your best friend and sit back and take a listen. But I want to remind all of you, as you come into this world, you have a lot of work to do. We're an oyster that needs to be opened up inside. But as you work on that oyster, you open up, you're going to find your inner pearl of greatness. And I hope you go out today and you get some soulful self-care for yourself as you find your inner pearl of greatness. Have a great day. Oh my gosh, you guys, that was so much fun. And how often do you hear me say on this show that your voice matters and you have to share your voice? I am telling you, Leslie reminded us this afternoon, whenever you're listening to us, that your voice matters and you need to step into that voice. Don't let fear hold you back. Step into the voice at your career, in your business, in your family. Let other people know what it is you want in your life and what you want to say yes to for yourself. So as Leslie said today, what are you going to do to step into that voice? That's the homework I want to give you today because I want to have you on my podcast. I want to know how you're stepping into your voice. So if you are not sure where to start with that, and if you want a little coaching on that, I would love to invite you just to email me at coachpearl@wsliving.com. That's coachpearl@wsliving.com. And just put the word mini in the comments and I will reach out to you because you deserve to be sure that you are strong, happy, empowered, radiant, and original self with that voice that you have. Have an amazing day.